So, ladies and gentlemen, the Twilight Zone did a lot of what do you call outside the box thinking with parallel universes and time travel and disappearing people and all kind of weird machinations that as a young person in the 1970s it fucked up my young brain because basically that was a type of fiction that was going on outside the box. And I say outside the box, not your traditional Martians and aliens or whatever. But this episode from season one, the 11th of the campaign, really stands out because of the strong acting, and the fact was it took a lot of special effects to get it done. It's called And When the Sky Was Opened. Now, ironically, ladies and gentlemen, Rod Serling did a teleplay, but Douglas Hayes, who was considered probably one of the better directors on TZ, took the mantle to make this impossible seem possible. Now, again, is an adaptation of a Richard Matheson story called Disappearing Act. Now, Searling's opening narration comes like this. Her name, the X-20. Her type, an experimental interceptor. Recent history, a crash landing in Mojave Desert. About a 31-hour flight, 900 miles into space. Incidental data, the ship with the men who flew her disappeared from a radar screen for 24 hours. Now, a great cast in this. Charles Ademan, Rod Taylor, of course, one of my favorite actors, and Timothy Hutton's very talented father, Jim Hutton. And, of course, Maxine Cooper's in this as well. Now, in this taut 30-minute episode, USAF Lieutenant Colonel Craig Forbes arrives at a military hospital to visit his friend and co-pilot Major William Gart. The two had recently piloted an experimental space plane, the X-20. During their voyage, the craft disappeared from radar screens for a full day before reappearing and crash landing in the desert, leaving Gart with a broken leg. Forbes is agitated and asks Gart if he remembers how many people were on the mission. Gart confirms that only he and Forbes piloted the plane, but Forbes insists that a third man, Colonel Ed Harrington, his best friend for 15 years, accompanied them. In a flashback, Harrington and Forbes are discharged from the hospital after passing their physical exams and visit a bar downtown. While there, Harrington is suddenly overcome by a feeling that he no longer belongs in the world. Disturbed, he phones his parents, who tell him they have no son named Ed and believe the person calling them is a prankster. Harrington then mysteriously vanishes from the phone booth, and no one but Forbes remembers his existence. Increasingly desperate, Forbes fruitlessly searches for any trace of his friend. Back in the present, Forbes finished recounting the story to Gart, and dismayed by his friend's claim that he doesn't know anyone named Harrington. Forbes then glances at the mirror and discovers he casts no reflection, causing him to flee the room in terror. Gart tries to hobble after him, only to find that Forbes has disappeared. Calling the duty nurse to ask if she saw where Forbes went, Gart is stunned by the nurse's claim that nobody named Forbes has been in the building and that Gart was the only man who was in a hospital room. Horrified, Gart also disappears. Now, within the episode, there's different usages of newspaper headlines and what he call a pause and effect that really make the episode go forth. When I first saw it, I was very interesting how Hayes worked it all together because, no offense, Rod Taylor, Charles Ademan, and Jim Hutton are very, very, what he called manly men. So for somebody to not remember who they were, it was either a brain manipulation or literally they were being snatched back to whatever universe they belong in. Now, at the end of the episode, an officer enters the building and asks the duty nurse if there are any unused rooms available to accommodate new patients. The new nurse takes him to the now completely empty room, which hosted the three astronauts, telling him that it had been unoccupied. The hangar, which previously housed the X-20, is then shown, with the sheet that covered the craft lying on the ground. There's no trace of the plane, as it and its crew never existed. Now, Serling ends it by saying, once upon a time, there was a man named Harrington, a man named Forbes, a man called Gart. They used to exist, but they don't any longer. Someone or something took them somewhere. At least they are no longer part of the memory of man. And as for the X-20 supposed to be housed there in his hangar, this too does not exist. And if any of you have any questions concerning an aircraft and three men who flew her, speak softly of them, and only in the Twilight Zone. Now, the episode again is loosely based on the short story Disappearing Act by Richard Matheson, first published in the magazine of Fantasy of Science Fiction in March '53. It really stood out because it's a very simple tale with a very, very intense what do you call, conclusion. Now, this was the first season of Twilight Zone was hitting out in the park. The previous episode was Judgment Night, and What You Need came up next. So it was really freaking a lot of people out because all three teleplays had different types of plots, but the same thing, the mysteries of the world cannot be explained. Now, ironically, Rod Taylor, best known for The Time Machine and Giant at the time, and director Hayes also worked together on the TV series Bearcats. Now, towards the end of the episode, Rod Taylor's character, Clegg Forbes, panics when he appears to cast no reflection when looking at a mirror in the hospital room. Due to what appears to be a production error in crafting this illusion, Taylor's right elbow is in fact visible in the mirror throughout the duration of the shot, with three fingers of Taylor's right hand appearing in the mirror, as well when Taylor raises his hands in horror. Well, like I said, not a big mistake, but how it worked together with this, ladies and gentlemen, you have to believe that the three soldiers, or what do you call, spacemen, are very good friends, and that's why he's getting to them. Because do you want an answer, and it could have been space madness or whatever. That's a factor of the episode was talked about within my group in high school. We talk about TZ all the time. Could have been space madness. It could have been somebody's dream, or somebody dreaming it, and you're the viewer dreaming it. So that was a pretty freaky theory. Now, the only comparable episode I can see, one of them is Star Trek The Next Generation. I don't think it's a very good episode, but Remember Me, when Beverly Crusher's character undergoes a similar experience where different people of the Enterprise are disappearing and the Enterprise is getting smaller and smaller. And, it tries the same theme, but not as much effectiveness because Next Generation didn't play horror that well. So, if you're going to watch season 1 of Twilight Zone, be prepared for some episodes that really F you up mentally, because why Star Trek was very, very popular from the 60s on is because there was a conclusion. But why Twilight Zone stuck with you, because there was no explanation why an episode would go a certain way, whether it was written by Serling or his great group of writers. There was always something off the skew. There was very few episodes that were basically mired in reality. It's Twilight Zone is mired into something that can't be explained, and can't be controlled. That Twilight Zone, when you're dreaming, and a dream makes no sense, but yet there's no violence and there's no evil in your dream. It just makes no sense. A bunch of randoms. This is what it is. But I mean, if you're watching Twilight Zone for the first time, I more than recommend, do not get the cut episodes. Watch the episodes that are not in syndication. Watch the DVD versions or whatever streaming you do. But this episode, again, big fan of Rod Taylor and Jim Hutton. And the episode came back into prominence again due to, obviously, Timothy Hutton, his son, getting a very big career, winning an Oscar for Ordinary People. But Jim Hutton and Rod Taylor, boys, they should have done more things together, because Jim Hutton and Rod Taylor's acting style was very similar, like we have at Redford and Newman. Like I said, the poor man's Redford and Newman, like my dad used to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our Twilight Zone Season 1 podcast, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.